Hi guys, welcome back to my show. We're discussing Oak Island and things that they found in last season that they're going to probably bring up into this new season starting in November 13th with Oak Island Season 6, Episode 1. One of the items I found last year was this rudolite garnet, and I did research on it back in the Victorian time. It was a good expensive gem back in the time in rare wood. It was very sought after. Right now, today, currently in 2018, they really they're just now getting back into a little bit of a popularity of it, but not as much as it did back in the Victorian day. Now, everybody thinks that this is a brooch. From what I'm seeing from the each side of this situation is there's no welding marks to prove that it's a brooch. Brooch usually back in the Victorian time would have a pin, and you'd pin it to your clothing. There's nothing indicating that. There's also nothing indicating that it's a pendant. The other option is that it could have been a piece of earring, and they did have Victorian rudolite garnet earrings. But I think the biggest mystery of it is that I saw maybe a connection with an actual breastplate. This breastplate, I don't know if everybody can see that or not. Let's see. Alright, yeah. Let me move over here a little bit and tune that way maybe. Alright. So, the breastplate, this was worn by Odd Fellows and Freemasons. Now, if you notice on the sides, they have little brackets that are actually holding in the actual stone. And these stones are faceted. 12 sides, which represent the 12 tribes. And there's 12 stones also on the breastplate that represents the 12 tribes, which I think is very interesting. To me, if you look at this again, and we'll look at the picture, see, all these little points could be the actual clasp where it comes together and it folds the gem in, see, and then holds it to that. Now, we know that the Knights Templar and Freemasons and all them came to the island, and it's very possible they could have had the breastplate, whether it was I think it was original, otherwise they wouldn't put a rudolite garnet in a regular Freemason one usually. A real gemstones. So I believe it would be a Freemason breastplate. And someone wore it, or they were hanging on to it. Because if it was protected, it would have been in the box if it was the Ark. If they're bringing the Ark, or even if it was in the treasure box, I don't believe it would even survive. Somebody was hanging on to it, I think, maybe having a struggle with it or something, or an accident happened and one of the stones popped off and it was on the popped on the ground. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I want you guys to look at these pictures here. But I think what they found was a piece of the breastplate, and I think it was the original one. The other thing that we looked at too, that it could have been like a piece of earring. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing on their show from last year that they were looking at was let's see if I can find the picture in their show here. I think that's it right there. Was their little cufflink button looking thing. It was brass. They dug it up because they're metal detecting there on the island, and it was something that they were digging up. But yeah, I did a little research on that too, and it dated around 17th century. Whoops, we're going too far back. Hang on a minute. We're skipping over some things here. There it is. Okay, so, and this is not showing up right. Here we go. Okay. So, yeah, the little cufflink that they found came up on their metal detector, and just like the other gemstone there, it came up on their metal detector, and they found it, and they dug it up, and it was circular in dimension, no odd shapes, I believe made of brass, and you know, you can tell it was really worn from the situation. But what I found was kind of interesting was underneath that it was really flat, and it looked like it had, I'm trying to get to the right episode here, hang on a minute, let me see if this will go to it or not. Give me a minute here while we're looking at this. They're trying to dig it up, saying they're metal detecting everything. So they're pulling it in the ground, and let's see what they're gonna do here. So yeah, as they're digging it up, they're checking things out here. I don't know why this is not working right. Alright, so, like I said, it's a little dinky thing. You gotta think back in the time of like Civil War time or before, they would only have these little round button type things. And in these buttons, they were mostly made of brass. I mean, only the really elite would have things made of gold, I guess you'd say, or silver, you know. It just depends on, you know, where they came from and stuff. But, yeah. Let's see if they hold it open here so I can show you guys. But, yeah. Oh, no, that's the stone. Okay, hang on. Let's see if that's it. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, there's an area, there it is, right there. There's a picture I'm looking for. So it's all flat, and you can't make out what's on it. But what was interesting, it has two type of flat edges, which tells me it was like soldered on in two different areas. Okay, now the closest thing that I saw was something British of that fashion, and on the back end of their little button, like this one here, there's two areas of soldering on there, which is part of their cufflink button. Most of them usually just has one where it pops on type thing, but this one actually matched up the same dimension as the other one, and this one happened to be British, which is a British George Rex King Crown 1700 cuff button, and it is extremely rare. This one's already been sold. So that's what it matched up to from what I saw. You guys can do your own research on that one, but that's what I came the closest to for what they found. Then here with, let's see, we're going backwards. I forgot we're going backwards to forwards. The other thing they found was what they thought they found was a chest keyhole plate that goes on a plate, you know, of a chest for the keyhole to go in to unlock a chest. And they're discussing basically in their show who they thought it was from and possible people that it could have been from type thing, including James Anderson, and you see the date 1788. Now, I did some research on this too, and I didn't come up with the same conclusion they did because they have not looked outside the box for other options. Now, there's the actual picture of the actual, let's see if you guys see that good enough. There you go. Right there, maybe. So that's the actual picture of it, okay, that they found. When I was looking through different type of keyhole plates, I found it back in the Victorian time, and possibly Italy having the fanciest work on their plates, but none of those, like you saw in this picture here, matched up to any chest, so I don't believe it's to an actual chest, like think it's a treasure chest. It's not to a treasure chest. That I can say. But when I was doing my research, well, fancy type of, or rich people type of, back in the time, Victoria rich people, type furniture, jewelry boxes, perfume boxes, alcohol boxes, tobacco boxes, or men's boxes. Not even military boxes would have that. This is a typical 17th century military box. As you can see, they would not do anything fancy. Just get the job done and do it well, But an example maybe of a fancy jewelry box, an old one, is that. And it does have some fancy work done to the metal. But yeah, you got to think back in the Victoria time, what type of boxes, and I'll show you this treasure box here, maybe if they'll let me here. So here's the front of the box. See, treasure boxes won't have anything fancy on them like this. Nothing. So they can get that right out of their head. It's not from that, okay? But back in the Victorian day, whatever they were sought after as valuable, they would put something fancy on it as a plate, okay, like a keyhole plate. So this would leave, in the Victorian time, it would be a man's box for their, expensive stuff, tobacco box, an alcohol box, jewelry box, a Bible box, possibly from the colonial time, but not that fancy now. And let's see, what does it say? Jewelry, alcohol, man's box. Man box usually puts money and stuff in it, I guess. Women's box, same way. And what I said there. So anyway, yeah, so I did the research on that, and that's pretty much what I found on that. And so yeah, so the one thing that they overlooked on this particular thing, that it could be a piece of jewelry. Now, yes, it does look like a keyhole goes in there, but who's to say it was worn over time, just like these holes got bigger and bigger and bigger with corrosion, right? You understand, it's like this and like that on the actual dimension of the whole thing, and it is fancy, okay? So when I was looking into it, I said, well, what about a pendant? Now, isn't this interesting? I think what they found, since they already found the, ruby rhyolite, that it could have been an actual Renaissance piece, back in the time. Maybe even even Victorian time, I'll put it that way. But as you see here, you got two gems here. Now, I want you to look at the positioning of these two gems. And then I want you to look at the positioning of the keyhole area. Okay? See? Now, granted, we just have to turn it this way, like it does, okay? So you could have had two gems in there and a bunch of other pearls or gems around here where the other holes are and things, okay? So it could have been even a pendant, because back in the Victorian time, they actually took blueprints of jewelry to make keyhole plates with, and keyhole plates back into making jewelry, vice versa for pendants and stuff. And it was a unique way of dealing with jewelry back in the time. And the same thing with smaller ones for like earrings and rings itself, for smaller keyholes and so on. So I think that's kind of interesting. They need to check that out too, because it could be the actual piece of part of the puzzle that, they may have here what they call a jewelry trail or money trail on the actual situation where all this stuff was found. And usually they leave trails to someplace else where something else bigger is found. So that's something that, they need to check out and overlook. But let's watch the show. And again, if you like what you see and what we discuss, click to subscribe. And just go ahead and watch Curse of Oak Island on season 17th. And if you can't get it on TV, maybe you can get it on the web. But let's discuss this and see what's happening and what your thoughts are and what you think things are and stuff like that. And leave it in my comment area. And maybe we can solve it this year. Who knows? You know? So, and they found coins and other things on the island, of course. But let's just see what happens this time. And leave it in my comment box. And let's check it out together, eh? Until then, be safe. Don't forget to click and subscribe too.